Why did I buy this 53-year-old Ford over a new tractor? Well, quite a few reasons, the first being, of course, cost. But let me back up and tell you how I came to this conclusion and made my decision. When we first moved onto our 12-acre property in Indiana, I had initially rented myself a 25 horsepower John Deere to get a feel for what size tractor I wanted. My fields were a bit overgrown with weeds, and so I wanted to rent something before I made a commitment to buy. Now, it was a really nice tractor given that the hydrostat transmission and the simple operation made it easy to operate. But honestly, the 25 horsepower lacked power to run much more than a 4-foot brush cutter in my thick, weedy fields. So maintaining our 12-acre homestead would take quite a while. The reason the 25 horsepower was kind of my cutoff was that I didn't want to get a tractor that required emissions and the complications that come with DEF. So anything over 25 horsepower in the generally new category was going to have emissions, which is why I had initially thought I might want a 25 horsepower tractor. The other was, of course, cost, and the lower horsepower tractors lack the complex emissions equipment that the larger horsepower ones require, which also saves on cost. So my thought was if I could get away with a 25 horsepower, that would be optimal, since I wouldn't be using our tractor commercially or to run really large implements. However, maintaining our fields and keeping them knocked down was the main use case for this tractor, and I also wanted to have a bucket. So those were kind of my thoughts going into this, which is why I rented a 25 horsepower newer tractor just to get a feel for what that was like. Now, operating this John Deere was very easy, and I'm sorry for the poor camera work here, but I'm trying to show the way that it was cutting down the fields, and this was after I had mowed down once, so this was not the most tall weeds, but I had previously mowed this, and this was about 3 months, or I should say 3 weeks of growth. So as you can see here, there's the 48-inch brush cutter behind me, and backing up and going forward with a hydrostat is extremely easy and quick. And that is the one thing that I really liked about the newer tractor versus mine, is that transmission. Backing up and moving forward is as simple as moving your foot once from one pedal to the other. And as you can see here, I'm running this tractor at 540 PTO, trying to keep it in its sweet spot to run that brush cutter. This, of course, had the bucket as well, and I also knew that I wanted to buy a tractor with a bucket, even though they are more expensive, but they're incredibly much more useful. And so that's why those were kind of my parameters going into it. So this machine only had about 50 hours on it. I rented it from a guy for $350 for a weekend. And out the door, I think this tractor new is running about $30,000 to $35,000, which is not cheap, right? And that does not include a brush cutter on the back. So that would be about another $3,000 to $4,000 at least to get a brush cutter here. Plus you've got sales tax, and then if you're going to finance it, now I know that they might have good finance rates, but that's going to cost extra money on top of it. So out the door with an implement and a new John Deere tractor, 25 horsepower, something like this, you're talking probably close to $40,000. And while I could have afforded that, I didn't want to be spending my money every month on something that I was probably only going to use a handful of times a month. It's not like I'm going to be driving this machine every single day. And so for somebody with a hobby farm, or what I would say is an unprofitable farm at this time, $40,000 is a very expensive tool. And I just try to think about what could I do with that money, right? Like I'd love to have a dump trailer. I don't have one right now, but I might get one in the future. But I might not, because again, my farm doesn't make money right now. And although it would be convenient to have, I could either rent it or use my old little trailer and pickups to do what I need to do with just a bit more manual labor. So I'm always trying to think about how many hours would I have to work, or how much would I have to sell something to make the money back and pay for this tool that I want, but it would be nice to have, but it's not necessary to have it. So as I've gotten older, that's the mentality I'm trying to go into purchases with is, okay, what's important to me? Can this tool get the job done? And how much time am I saving by using this tool that might cost more over another tool that might cost less, but how much time do I have to work to pay for that tool or to pay off that tool, right? So those are always kind of my considerations going into it. If I'm going to use it frequently enough and it's going to save me enough headache, maybe I'll buy something newer or better. But if the old tool gets the job done, then do I really need to spend the extra money to get something shiny and new that might help me 20 or 40% more do the job better? But how much resources am I going to spend to make that money back to then buy the newer tool, right? Because it's always kind of a trade-off at the end of the day. So that's kind of my thought process going into it. This John Deere is really nice to drive, don't get me wrong, but it just wasn't necessary for what I'm doing on our property and the infrequency in which I would be using a tractor. So now going over to my Ford, this thing is not the most precise machine, right? It's kind of wobbly because it's got the clutch, and you've got 5 speeds plus a high and a low. Operating it, as you can see here, is kind of like there's a learning curve, right? This is probably my second or third hour using this machine, but I'm trying to back spread some topsoil here, and it's just not quite as smooth as a hydrostat transmission. But does it get the job done? Yes, it absolutely does. And the thing is, I spent about $7,000 on this entire setup. That was cash out the door, so no sales tax, obviously no financing charge, and this machine came with the brush cutter for that price. And so, that was one payment, and now I'm done with it, right? Versus maybe $40,000 to get roughly a similar setup, something newer but lower in horsepower, then I wouldn't be able to run a 6-foot brush cutter. So in my eyes, this tractor that's about 50 horsepower could cut my fields twice as fast for a fraction of the cost, because I can run a 6-foot brush cutter instead of a 4-foot. And I could do that, I could buy, 6 of these tractors for the same cost as one brand new tractor, right? So if this thing broke, I could replace it and or fix it a lot cheaper than I could replace or potentially fix one of the new tractors. Now, I know the new tractors have a warranty, and that's great. And I'm not trying to knock anybody who wants to go out and buy a new tractor. Just for me, it was a hard pill to swallow when I knew I'd probably be driving this thing or using this thing maybe once a week, on the weekends when we're keeping our fields up or using the bucket. So that's just kind of my considerations going into it. Does this tractor work and do everything I want it to do? Yeah, it does. Is it perfect and precise? No, it's not. It's kind of old and it's a little bit tired, but to be honest, it's been working for 53 years, so it was probably built pretty good to begin with, because it's still here working and it's still doing the job, so it does what I need it to do, and it does what I ask it to do, and my expectations are appropriately set. It's an old machine that I paid $7,000 for, but it helps me out so much, and it still has a lot of life left in it. So that's just kind of my thoughts is, what's it going to cost in time and money to buy that thing or work for it, versus how much better is the new thing versus the old thing. So I hope you got something out of this video. I like to see old stuff still running, because to me it's a testament of the way it was made and what went into it. So enjoy the video, and thanks for watching.